joining us. Zermon's covered a lot, but we hope in the next 90 minutes is helpful to you as you just make your decisions on April 28th in this upcoming federal election. Before we begin, I do want to thank our candidates for being here today with us, for putting their time, energy, and resources into your individual bids to represent us in Ottawa on Parliament Hill. So thank you all for that. A few housekeeping notes. I think Zermon's touched on most of it, but our opening statements will begin. Each candidate will have 3 minutes for an opening statement, and then the reverse will happen on the back end. Whoever starts now will be the last for closing statements. Order of questions have been done in a random draw, and they'll be shuffled through from start to finish there. Again, thank you to Niagara, thank you to Modern Niagara, and Cogeco for hosting us this morning, and thank you all for coming. So, my role today is pretty straightforward. I'm going to get to pose the questions and keep things on track to the best of my ability. And with some help with some timekeeping, Xander, our political studies intern from Queens, is helping us out with timing. He will be counting down the candidates at a 1:30 and 15 second. Got it? Okay. Just making sure everyone sees that, because I don't have ability to turn your mics off, but I guess Rob does. Okay. So now it's time for opening statements, and we'll be starting with the Green Party, Fintan Hartnett.
Great. Thanks so much,
sir.
Karen. Good morning. My name is Fintan Hartnett, and let me start by thanking you, not just for being here, but for your contributions to Kingston. You create jobs, pay taxes, and keep the city running, regardless of what is or isn't happening in Ottawa. Let's be real. 37 years of Liberal MPs in Kingston and the Islands is a lot. It's a long time. And now here we are, bouncing from one crisis to another, skyrocketing rents, housing prices out of control, small businesses barely scraping by, grocery bills that are keeping food banks in business, bridges that don't work, ferries that don't work, and now trade threats from the United States that could wreck the economy. When does it stop? What happened to all those Liberal promises for 37 years? So I'm not a career politician. I'm not polished, scripted, or handled by backroom strategists. I'm a sailor, a captain, a small business owner, someone who's had to hustle to make payroll and keep the boat afloat, not just give speeches about it. As my friend Mark Carney said, the hardest job in Canada is making payroll. Well, he's right. He's talking about real-world experience, and that is what this moment in time needs. I got that experience working all over the world, but especially in Africa, where I've seen the effects of conflict firsthand. I've seen what happens when governments collapse and communities are left to fend for themselves. I've seen what drought and real climate crisis looks like, but I've also seen resilience. I've seen people rebuild, organize, and lead. Not because someone gave them permission, but because the moment demanded it. And folks, this is that kind of moment. Our relationship with the United States is shifting under our feet. The world is changing fast, and we have no choice. Either we get pushed around by Trump and his sociopathic billionaire pals, or we stand up, chart our own course, and build something stronger here in a sovereign Canada. But we don't get there by making the same old choices. What is the definition of insanity? Making the same choice repeatedly and hoping for a different outcome. We can do better. I didn't come here to play the game. I came here to break it. Carney or Poilievre, red or blue, that's not the real choice. That's a distraction. This isn't a presidential election. We elect members of parliament. So make sure you elect an MP who isn't sitting on the backbenches trolling people on social media. Make sure they can be heard, which is why Kingston needs a Green MP. Because the Green Party doesn't whip votes. The Green Party isn't a power-at-all-costs party. We insist upon putting people before party and country before party. Can the red and blue team say that? The answer is no. And also because I'm here for one reason, to be the fiercest and most fearless advocate Kingston has ever sent to Parliament. This election isn't about staying comfortable, it's about growing up as a country, about declaring once and for all that Canada is not America's little brother or 51st state. We are a sovereign nation. We are brilliant, capable people, and we are ready to lead and take our place in the world. As America sinks, so Canada will rise. Let's make that change, and let's make Kingston matter in Ottawa. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Next is Mark Gerritsen, Liberal Party. I find it interesting you all sat in the order of which you're speaking.
Perfect.
Quite
Wow.
a draw, so
I feel like I
know.
should be on the left and Brian.
Mark Gerritsen, Liberal Party.
Thank you very much, Karen, and good morning, everybody. It's great to be here with you, and thank you to Modern Niagara, as well as your TV, Kojiko, for recording this so that a wider audience can see it later on. I'm the Liberal Party candidate running for re-election. I've spent the last 5 weeks knocking on doors. I've knocked on some of the doors, people that I see in this room, and overwhelmingly I've heard one thing, and that is the world that we live in now, the relationship that we have with the United States, and what that means for our country. The threats from Donald Trump in terms of our economic sovereignty, in terms of our absolute sovereignty, is nothing that I would have ever expected to see in my lifetime. What we need now is we need a leader, somebody who can guide us through this, somebody who has the proven experience, somebody like Mark Carney, who has been the governor of 2 central banks, and the individual that Stephen Harper himself accredited for saving the economy in 2008. I think, and I would also offer that we need a balanced vision. We need somebody that is willing to look at the financial responsibilities that we have, but also consider the context of the investments that we need in innovation and social infrastructure throughout our communities. On a local level, it's been an honor over the last 9 years to serve the people of Kingston and the Islands and bring your voices to Parliament. I can tell you that we've been successful in areas that hadn't been seen, quite frankly. When Stephen Harper was the Prime Minister of Canada, there was absolutely no investment in affordable housing in Kingston. I was on City Council at the time. I was a mayor and a city councillor. The only money we ever got for affordable housing was from the provincial government. Now, it's the exact opposite. The federal government has helped build 250 affordable units in the city of Kingston. We've also signed a $28 million deal directly with the city of Kingston to remove barriers to encourage development to occur faster. If elected again, I will commit myself to continuing to build more affordable housing, but also make housing more affordable by, again, tackling those barriers that, quite frankly, do exist in municipalities. Any developers in this room would know that there's a lot of red tape that needs to be broken down. And I'll also work on continuing to bring money to the city, like I did for the third crossing of the Cataraqui River. I'll do the same thing for the LaSalle Causeway so that we can have an updated, brand new bridge that is paid for by the federal government. Thank you, and I'm looking forward to the questions today.
Thank you, Mark. Now over to Dara Jita Hope
Thank you.
Okay. With the NDP. My apologies.
Look at the color.
I know. Coordinated beautifully.
Daria, for those who are francophone. Daria, for those who are anglophone. Judy Hope, as if there is an H between both U's. Just stretch it. Judy Hope, that's my name. The NDP federal candidate for Kingston and the Islands, a huge privilege. None of you have seen me on this podium before, first-time politician, first-time citizen affiliated with any party. Most of the work I've done in our communities was in the background, and also apolitical, but definitely share values with what the NDP is. And for those of you who have issue with what the NDP is now, what the NDP could be or used to be, there is definitely it has been a great experience for me to do this now and to be one of the candidates for Kingston, and I'm very fortunate to be one of the folks here, and really hoping to get to a point where you get to know me and you get to trust me, despite the CV that may not have politician written all over it. It is about, this election is about finding a person who can represent us and represent us well in Parliament, and to bring all of our voices to Parliament, not just a few. And that's what I can do as a politician. I wanted to start by addressing the resume of a politician before I further introduce myself to you. And then, in the right order here, so you can follow my thought, I tend to ramble, so thank you for being there today to keep me on time. I am a nurse. I am a nurse who's worked in many communities in Canada and overseas. I've worked in First Nations community in the Hudson Bay, the James Bay. I've worked in Ottawa and Sudbury, etc. I have volunteered left and right, top and bottom in Kingston, Martha Stable, Hotel Dieu, everywhere in the community. Invisible to some, but quite visible to many. I have cared for your loved ones. I may have cared for some of you. I have taught some of you. I may have taught some of your children, and hopefully we continue to do so, provided that our post-secondary education are well-funded and we're able to work there and teach our loved ones and our children and their children. And I am a community builder. I'm a community advocate. I am a researcher. I have, done many things in the short years I've lived so far, 30 or so years on this planet. I am a refugee. I am a francophone. I am multilingual. And to say on that note, je me dire aux francophones qui sont peut-être en train de nous écouter en ce moment-ci que je suis vraiment désolée qu'on ne peut pas avoir cet engagement dans les deux langues ou en français ou en anglais. Et puis pour les autres qui ne parlent aucune de ces deux langues-là, je suis vraiment désolée. On pourra peut-être faire mieux dans le futur. Mais aussi, je voudrais m'adresser à ceux qui n'écoutent pas, qui ne voient pas. On pourrait vraiment faire mieux. My hope is that for the rest of this debate and moving on up to E-Day, you will all have the courage, and hopefully we all have the time to reach to me, to get to know me, understand that I have your best interests at heart. As a public health nurse, as a community health nurse, as a critical care nurse, as a community advocate, and so on. And I am very fortunate and privileged to be in this position and at the stage right now. And, I know that it's time to change, and that is exactly what I've been hearing from folks door knocking since my nomination.
Thank you. And now Brian Patterson with the Progressive Conservative Party.
Thank you very much, Karen. Good morning, everyone. It is a great honor to be here this morning and to share the stage with some great candidates. I will confess it is a little strange being at a chamber event in a different capacity than what I'm used to, but I am looking forward to this morning. I think we're going to be talking about some really important issues for our community and some very important issues for our country. The story I like to tell, I've told some of you in this room and many people around the community, is that being the mayor has been just an incredible privilege. I love our city, I love our community. Over the last couple of years, one of the things that I have noticed is that many of the biggest challenges that we are facing as a community have shifted. They used to be local in nature, but now they're national. They're national in scale, they're national in scope. These are big challenges, and I'm sure everybody in this room is aware of them. Whether we talk about the lack of housing, we talk about the affordability crisis. In fact, 1 out of every 3 families in Kingston right now is struggling to be able to make ends meet and put enough food on the table. Talk about the issues around public safety and security, being safe in our parks or walking in our downtowns, being able to offer hope in the face of the ongoing mental health and addictions crisis, and being able to offer real solutions there. And of course, as has already been referenced by my fellow candidates, of course, now the economic uncertainty that's been unleashed upon us through the threats to our sovereignty and to our economy from the Trump administration. There's no question, this is a critical moment. This is a critical moment for our country. It's a critical moment for our community. And so when we come together, we do need to stand up to these threats. We do need to stand up to the Trump administration. But I'm convinced of this. The way that we stand up to Trump is from a position of strength. And in order to do that, we need to address the things that need to be fixed, the things that are not working in our communities and in our country. We need to address those weaknesses that we've talked about, whether it's affordability or safety or security or housing, these other pieces. And so this is where I'm very proud to be able to represent the Conservative plan for change. It is change. It's new ideas and new approaches about how we can address these challenges that unfortunately have not gotten better, but have gotten worse over the last 10 years. This is what democracy is about, is having those opportunities and menu of different options and changes. One of the things that I have heard at the door is the number of people that have lost hope. We've talked about restoring the province of Canada. It's those people that say, listen, I've done everything right. I've gone to school, I've gotten an education, I've gotten a job, and I just can't make ends meet. That's the sort of thing that we need to address. We need to be able to restore that hope. We need to bring the real change that will matter, because then we can fix the problems that we're challenged with as a community and as a country. but also then we are in the very best position to be able to stand up to Trump and make sure we can strengthen our country internationally. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. I'm just going to make one change to our setup right now. And Xander, if I can get you to move, take this chair and just slide back behind the cameras so that the candidates have a clear view of
Of our time
Xander.
running out?
Of our timing. Our timing.
Right out there, Sam.
Finn. All right. I think that might be better for everybody. Are we comfortable with that? Awesome. Great. Thank you. All right. Thank you for your opening statements. And we move right into our first question. And our first question, the order for the questions will be Mark, Daria, Brian, and then Finn. Okay, that's the order for the first question. And then we'll just rotating through that order. So the first question is, will each candidate please outline their plans to prioritize the permanent replacement for the LaSalle Causeway, ensure MOT and PSPC remain engaged with the community and open to innovative solutions, and prioritize a solution within the next couple of years? Mark.
MOT is Ministry of Transportation. PSPC is Public Services and Procurement Canada, for those that aren't aware of the federal acronyms. So this is obviously a very important issue for me as a representative of the area, but also as somebody who lives out in the East End. Certainly affected by the LaSalle Causeway and the closings that have happened over the last summer in particular, but also as they affect us every time that they are closing temporarily in order to let marine traffic through. My approach would be the same as when in terms, I think we actually need to do four things. The first would be to advocate for federal funding to make sure that this project gets approved. This project is going to be large enough that it requires Treasury Board approval. This is not something that can be signed off on by bureaucrats, and therefore it's going to need proper oversight and continually pushing and following up, which leads me to my second point, which is timelines. Getting from PSPC exactly what the timelines will be in terms of procurement and installation. And the fourth thing, I'm seeing the really good time monitor there, would be ensuring public awareness. When the bridge first was out of service last summer, I spent quite a bit of time through email communication as well as social media, making sure that the public is aware of what is going on. And then the fourth thing would be stakeholder involvement, making sure that the stakeholders who are affected by the bridge closures, whether you're a resident on the East End or you work on the East End or you are need the open bridge for marine traffic, it is important that people are made fully aware of what's going on and that the proper timelines are provided. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark.
Thank you. Let me keep this with me so I can, stay focused and not run out of my 2 minutes. Is it 2 minutes?
2
That's it?
minutes.
Okay, all right. Definitely a lot to say on this issue. The matter of fact is there is urgency, and we need someone who will tester of all of the rooms that we can place ourselves in to really advocate for this and to improve the infrastructure for our community. It goes beyond posting online, it goes beyond emailing, it goes beyond, informing folks. That is a must for sure, because we have different approaches and priorities in our community, and those should be respected and heard. I value access to different resources in our community. I've heard that folks need those here as well, so it needs to be done. It is way overdue. I cannot believe how we are even in a state where we have, half roads. But here we are. But it's time that be dealt with. And it is definitely something that I would push forward and put to the forefront of, if elected, chosen by you to represent us and speak on our behalf to Parliament. And as Finn said, we cannot expect a batch bank Liberal MP to, push many issues in Parliament. Unfortunately, we have been let down over the years, Mayor, and now as a Member of Parliament. And so, as your MP, like I said, I'll always, ask the tough question. And for anyone who knows me, they will know that that's exactly what I do. You can ask the directors that I've worked with. You can ask anybody that I've worked with or volunteered with. There are issues my community is suffering, and I work on finding how to address those. And absolutely will go up and down wherever I can with the privilege that a member of parliament has. There is power to actually change and support our community, and I will never take that for granted, and I'll do my darnest to get things done for us. The other thing is that PSP has made a mess of this entire thing, and we can hold them accountable.
Thank you. Ryan?
Thank you. Well, I think everyone in this room understands just what a calamity the loss of the causeway was for us last year. It was a crisis for our community, and it still took 6 months to be able to get just a temporary bridge in place. And that speaks to the speed that bureaucracy moves if there isn't a lot of political pressure, a lot of advocacy, relentlessly pushing. We need to be very active on this file. And I think that Daria made a good point. The word that stuck out to me was urgency. I think we need to recognize that the temporary bridge that's in place right now is not a viable long-term solution. Starting this Saturday, a piece of that bridge is going to come out on Saturday, and the bridge will be unusable for the entire day. And then that's going to increase in frequency throughout the summer. I was downtown just last week talking to a downtown retailer, and I cannot express to you the fear that was in her voice when she talked about, we're going to lose the LaSalle Causeway every Saturday in the summer, the busiest day of the week for our downtown businesses. This is a critical issue. The urgency cannot be overstated. And so, yes, when it comes to advocacy, creating that political pressure, as Mark has said, bringing the stakeholders together so we can speak with one voice. Sometimes there are some differing opinions from our marine operators versus downtown businesses and commuters. We need to get everybody on the same page and push, push, push. Yes, this is going to cost a lot of money, but our community deserves this. We can't take our eye off the ball. We need to push as hard as we can because there are thousands of people across our community that depend on that crossing. So there is work to be done, but I ultimately believe that by working together that we can get that bridge in place.
Thank you. To you, sir.
Thank you. I envy these guys being able to talk off the cuff like that. I'm a captain who just used to telling people what to do as opposed to sort of speaking out like that. But I've got some notes here, or hope I do. So once again, Liberals have held this riding for 37 years. If they truly cared about infrastructure, we wouldn't be scrambling to fix the LaSalle Causeway now. This isn't just some local inconvenience, it's a critical economic artery for Kingston. It's also cutting off the only dry dock, I say that as a mariner, of its size on this part of Lake Ontario, which caters to large vessels. It's cutting off a working marina and our biggest boat builder in the area. That means lost business, delayed repairs, and real economic consequences for our marine industry, for local workers, and for the city. We have a great maritime tradition here in Kingston. We need to continue that, and this problem with the bridge is affecting this. So we need a permanent replacement. We need it fast. We need PSPC to get moving. We need someone to advocate, to stand there, to kick them in the you-know-what, to get this thing moving. And this failure is part of a pattern, by the way. For those of you who don't know what the Phoenix Pay system is, we have a bunch of people, military people, government workers in this town, who because Stephen Harper created a payroll system that has been affecting government to this day, has made life miserable. That's PSPC. They're responsible for that. We need to be going after these guys, and we need to do it fast. So this election is going to be something where this becomes an exceptionally important part of what we do in this election cycle. We have to sort this bridge out. We should also have to remember that Ottawa breaks things, and at the moment, Kingstonians are paying the price. So let's not have another blue or red MP sitting quietly on Parliament Hill doing what they are told and protecting large engineering firms that contribute to their party's coffers. We need someone who throws elbows, who speaks up, who understands how important infrastructure payroll is to the city and how important this bridge is to the city. We need a green MP. Thank you.
Thank you. And question number 2. When assessing Canada's current position, how would you evaluate our national programs in the terms of, national progress in terms of economic well-being and healthcare outcomes? What specific federal fiscal approaches regarding taxation levels, deficit spending, and economic priorities do you believe would best serve Canadians moving forward? Please explain the reason why, please explain the reasons behind your preferred policy direction. And we'll begin with Dara.
All right. Sorry, losing my voice. I spend my day either door knocking, losing my knees, or calling you at home, losing my voice. So bear with me. Liberals and conservatives have embarked on an economic project over the last decades, which is hurting our communities here in Kingston and far beyond, including our islands. Instead of investing in people and communities, the government now invests in the majority of its money in corporate giveaways to the biggest and wealthiest companies in Canada. Very unfortunate. We're not all millionaires, so they should care for us. It is driving monopolization of the market, and it's the reason of our healthcare system being in crisis right now. It is a big part of the reason nobody can afford a decent place to live anymore, or even dream of buying the first home. So New Democrat have a different vision to restore competition and to drive innovation. It boggles my mind that we have great minds growing in our educational institutions here in Kingston, but they leave. We cannot retain and have them contribute to the economy. I believe that when you invest in people, you make the whole country stronger. And we must remember that health is wealth, and wealth is health. The government must play a proactive role to ensure that the housing market provides a good home for all, and that our universal health care system covers all of us from head to toe. And I know that I can advocate for that, for those issues. And as a nurse, as a community member, as a person who's involved in research, apologies for this, it fell, I have 10 years. And, I've got your back, trust me.
Thank you. Can we just help for a second? Thank you very much. Thank you. And Brian.
Thanks, Karen. When we talk about measures of economic well-being, so as an economist, when I'm giving lectures in economics, the internationally accepted measure for well-being or living standards is something called GDP per capita. Over the last 10 years, GDP per capita in Canada has been stagnant. It has hardly moved in 10 years, while most other developed countries have seen significant growth in their GDP per capita. That means, in plain terms, is that our living standards are falling behind the rest of the world. That's why so many people are finding it hard to make ends meet and struggling with affordability. In fact, the issues we're facing with the US right now, one of the frustrating things for me is that the gap in living standards between the US and Canada has never been larger than it is right now. So what do we need? Well, we need a growth agenda. We need an agenda that can actually unlock our resources, that many of those resources that have been stuck in the ground over the last 10 years. We have the potential to be an energy and resource superpower in the world. And so being able to direct our resources to get those out of the ground, to create wealth and prosperity, creating wealth that then allows us to have the resources to be able to invest in other key priorities. I know that the question mentioned healthcare, and healthcare is a provincial responsibility, but the federal government, one of our key roles is to be able to provide funding. Well, the way we provide funding is obviously by fixing the budget so that we're not spending billions of dollars on debt from money that we borrowed over the last number of years because of deficit after deficit after deficit. But instead, with a growth agenda, being able to generate new income and new wealth, and that in turn creates revenues that we can then put into important social services. So of course we need more healthcare. We need more family doctors. We've experienced that as a city. But I think the federal government's role is to create that environment that attracts investment so that we can see that wealth unlocked, so that we can meet the needs that our community is facing.
Thank you, Brian. Finn? And Finn, watch the time.
I can't see that far. I also don't have Daria's problem with the hair situation. So I do have the glasses situation. Some interesting points. I just want to address something Brian said. I lived in Africa for a long time. If you think things are bad here, you have no idea. things are pretty good here. We live pretty well in Canada. This is a great country, right? We're wealthy. We're one of the wealthiest countries in the world. The idea that we need to keep growing, right? The idea that keep on moving, that's conservative speak for let's let oil companies, mining companies rape the environment. Because that's what they really mean by that. Let's free up our corporate donors to do what they want. So voting Liberal or Conservative will cost you money, period. Carney and Poilievre are already spending money they don't have. We all know that, and that's not responsible government. Both parties have spent decades handing our future over to corporate lobbyists and billionaires who don't live here and probably wouldn't pay taxes if they did. And the result, sky-high rents, student debt, grocery prices that make you sweat, hospitals that can't keep up, and wages that haven't moved in years. So while the red and blue teams pour your tax dollars into corporate welfare, we'll end fossil fuel subsidies, we'll tax the ultra-wealthy, and make corporations finally pay their fair share. And we'll balance the books. We'll do that without taxing the average Canadian. We'll make the GST holiday permanent. That is real savings. We will support universal pharmacare, dental care, mental health care, and we'll produce clean energy jobs right here, not outsourced to the lowest bidder overseas. All right, we'll stop grocery chains from gouging us, and we'll be activists for you in making your lives more affordable. This isn't about growing the GDP. Don't forget that. So that's just conservative speak for, hey, how do we reward our donors, right? We're a better country than that, and we need to embark on a better future. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. Mark?
The problem with GDP per capita is it only measures the economic output of an individual per capita. The reality is that we need to value more than just an economic output. And that's actually one of the things that made me want to endorse Mark Carney, because he talks about the value of an individual as opposed to just the value of the economic output. So when you talk about what other outputs are there, social infrastructure, healthcare, pharmacare, which we introduced, dental care, which we introduced, none of those things will be caught in your GDP per capita. But if you want to talk about another economic term, let's talk about debt per capita. The amount of debt that we have in Canada versus, debt per GDP outcome. The amount of debt that we have the lowest debt subject to our GDP in the G7. Canada is in a very fiscally responsible position. It's why we continue to receive a AAA credit rating. When we talk about the deficit and debt that we take on, we always have to measure that against how good our economy is doing. Many of you own businesses. If your businesses start generating 30 or 40% the revenue every year, you can responsibly take on more debt. And as a matter of fact, you have to, because you need to start providing more opportunities for your employees and so on. It's the exact same idea with the government. As more economic activity occurs, more revenue is seen, there's more infrastructure that needs to be provided to people, whether that's real infrastructure or social infrastructure. So I think we have to be careful when we talk about GDP per capita, because it significantly misses a lot of the social infrastructure and real infrastructure that we have in our country.
Thank you, Mark.
Sorry.
And under time.
Thank you. I'm trying to impress you today, Karen.
Wow. Thank you. All right. So our third question is, and you're keeping me on schedule now, so thank you. The future of Kingston's penitentiary site remains uncertain. According to St. Lawrence Parks Commission, Penn Tours have generated over $54.7 million in economic impact and have attracted over 600,000 visitors between 2016 and 2024. Additionally, the site has supported the film industry, contributing further to our local economy. What specific actions will you take to ensure that Kingston continues to benefit from this significant economic driver? And the first response comes from Brian.
Thanks very much, Karen. So as we know, a couple of months ago, the current Liberal government designated Kingston Penitentiary for potential housing. And I guess I'll answer the question with a question, like, how does that happen? How does that happen? I want to credit Mark. I mean, he's spoken kind of against his own government, saying that he doesn't think that that's going to be viable. But I just don't understand how the current government could look at Kingston's largest tourism asset, and suggests that that should be taken away. As has been said, it brings in millions of dollars in economic impact, the film opportunities that we're attracting from around the globe. Obviously, we need to protect that. It's so critical. The number of jobs in our tourism sector that tie directly to Kingston Penitentiary, that's something that really absolutely has to be protected. Now, I would go further. I actually appreciate we do need more housing. And so what I would suggest is, well, what about some of the other properties that I think would absolutely be fantastic for housing, such as the Collins Bay Penitentiary lands. We have this giant piece of property in the middle of the urban core. I'm sure some of that land might be needed to be reserved for future uses by Corrections Canada, but why not take that land and offer that available for housing? Why take one of our largest tourism assets and use that instead? So I think that there needs to be an approach where we can absolutely unlock federal properties for housing, at the same time protect such vital tourism assets like Kingston Penitentiary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Hopefully most of us are in agreement that the Kingston Pen is a great economic opportunity for Kingston. It's tough talking about prisons that way. They make great tourist revenue, but I guess Alcatraz worked out that way as well. Hopefully we can make that work. If I was your MP, I'd be standing up, I'd be hammering it. I'd say, I agree with Brian. There's other places we can put affordable housing. Rockland, just down the street, what a great opportunity that would be for affordable housing. And that's the other key here too. What kind of housing are we putting in there, right? Are we just handing money over or something over to developers so they can put up the kind of housing that makes life difficult for renters like myself? Or are we building something that's sustainable and that's good for the community, right? The biggest problem someone like Brian will have if he becomes the MP as a Conservative, or even poor Mark has, is that you're with parties that whip the vote, right? If their interests don't coincide with the interests of Kingstonians, these guys are marginalized, right? Mark's very courageous, stands up, says, you know, I think this pipeline is a bad idea. I think we need to keep the Kingston Pen. But the Liberal Party doesn't react to that. Yeah, the same will happen with the Conservative Party because they care about their party first and they don't care about Kingston. So I want you to remember that when you're deciding who's going to go out there and stand up for things like the Kingston Pen, things that matter to Kingstonians, right? Those are things that we need to address locally. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. And Mark?
I've voted against my government on a number of occasions, to Finton's point. I even voted against on the pipeline thing. It wasn't just me standing up and saying it. I didn't believe that it was in the best interest of the federal government to own a pipeline, so I did vote against that, and I am happy to speak my conscience and vote that way too. In terms of the Kingston Penitentiary, this doesn't make sense for housing, and I think we all know that. As soon as I heard this, I immediately called some of the bureaucrats to inquire about this decision and wrote a letter to the minister expressing my concern over the choice. I don't believe that that will ever be used for housing. Back in the spring of 2024, I had the Minister of Corrections to Kingston. The mayor wasn't available. It wasn't his fault, but he wasn't available. But Don Amos, who I believe was the deputy mayor at the time, came. We toured the site, and the minister understood the economic impact and possibilities that could be seen here. The reality is that Kingston Penitentiary is owned by the federal government. It's owned by 40 million Canadians. For the city of Kingston to benefit solely off this, we need to develop partnership directly with either a third party or the city of Kingston. If the city of Kingston was to say to the federal government, we will give you the market value for this property, it could be sold almost instantly. The reality is the city has always been extremely reluctant and has always been looking for the property at no cost in order to receive all the economic benefit out of it. So what we need to do is we need to develop a strategy. And I understand it's not particularly a cheap piece of property, but we need to develop a strategy that involves turning over that particular prison and the land to an organization or the City of Kingston so that the tours and everything can be run by the city. Corrections Canada is not in the business of holding concerts and doing tours. Quite the contrary, they keep people inside, don't let them come and go. We need we need to set up an operation that fully respects that, and I think it really needs to be led by the city. Thank you.
Daria.
All right. I just want to start by saying that, apologies again for my voice, by saying that, the mayor, to refer to as the mayor, and, it started with consultation. What are Kingstonians asking for? Are they asking for more homes? Yes, they are. Where can we build them? The city and those who represent us can put their heads together to figure that out. I don't know how they have not managed to do so. And here we are. The Kingston Pen, I believe, that should remain a space for education and creativity. They've all said it, brings a lot of money, and we need that money. As MP, I would work with government, all of them, all involved, local community groups and businesses. Most of you, some of you are here currently listening. We'll work together to ensure that we utilize the infrastructure and everything that Kingston Pen has to offer to support the community, but also enrich the economy of Canada. It just does not benefit only us, really. It is about ensuring that the Pen Museum can administer Kingston Pen itself, sort of keeping the business here at home and creating jobs. And also some other forms of public space that enables the site to contribute to our community. Definitely consulting and seeing what the rest of Kingston feel the site can be used for, unlike what have been done in our city, where all of a sudden we know that there's a stadium being built where perhaps it shouldn't be. So definitely lots of talk to happen with all level of government and you investors and business makers in our community.
Thank you very much. We're on to our fourth question.
It's me again, isn't it?
We're on track. All right, the fourth question. In an era where, sorry, my turn.
I'm glad I'm not alone.
In an era where political polarization is increasing and our country faces economic challenges, including trade pressures from the U.S., what specific steps would you take to promote Canadian unity across partisan lines? Please outline how you work collaboratively with MPs from opposing parties to advance Kingston's interest while strengthening the nation's cohesion. And we'll start with...
How's last?
Yeah. I feel as the real underdog here, I should just get to go last every time. That would be fair.
No.
Okay, political unity doesn't come from party insiders cutting backroom deals in Ottawa. It comes from MPs who are free to represent their communities, and that's the biggest problem with the electoral system we have. 11 years ago, Justin Trudeau stood up and said, I'm going to change this. I'm going to make a better electoral system. I'm going to create electoral reform. Everybody in Canada will get a say. We will represent people from all stripes and all regions. And here we are 11 years later in a first-past-the-post system, getting to choose one person, having no other input. In fact, you might as well think you're in a presidential election at the moment. A lot of people don't realize they're voting for this Mark. They think they're voting for Mark Carney, but we elect MPs. We don't elect presidents, right? Green MPs aren't shackled by whipped votes. We're free to work across party lines, to negotiate, to build consensus. That's real unity. If elected, I will work with anyone, Liberal, NDP, Conservative, who wants to get results for Kingston. The Kingston Pen is a good example. I'll echo what Daria said. We have the mayor, we have the sitting MP, and they're discussing years later what to do with the Kingston Pen. That should have happened already. We should have dealt with that already. So please, Green parties have a great reputation for working across party lines. Liz May, great reputation for working across party lines. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Ben. Mark.
I would agree with that. The first member of parliament that I met with when I was elected in 2015 was actually Elizabeth May. We had a great conversation about Lyme disease because it affects both of our regions. All that to say, I would approach answering this question with highlighting two things, one national and one local. Nationally speaking, a lot was accomplished in the last parliament, and that was thanks to working across party lines. The NDP, quite frankly, influenced a ton of policy. When we look back, I give all the credit, and I've said it in the House of Commons many times.
Let's get me there
When
then.
we look back on this particular parliament, decades from now, we will remember that it was the NDP working with the Liberals that brought in dental care, pharmacare, $10 a day childcare, national school food programs. It's absolutely pivotal to work across party lines. Unfortunately, sometimes there are members of parliament that don't want to do that. They just want to obstruct and filibuster and prevent. But when you can get to work, like we did with the NDP for 2.5 years, you can get real results. Our Canadian flag was made during a minority parliament, as was CPP and Medicare. Locally, I think the first example that comes to mind is the early morning train for VIA. Many of you in this room would know that that was recently reinstated. I started a letter campaign, got the members of parliament who are all conservative, basically between Brockville to Belleville and beyond, to sign on to that letter, calling on VIA to reinstate that particular train, and they did. So I think that there are opportunities to work across party lines, and when you do, you can actually get a lot of great things done.
Thank you, Mark. Daria.
I wish that was an endorsement.
It's the closest thing.
Thank you very much. So I would act as someone who is tirelessly trying to tear down interprovincial trade barriers, find ways to add value to Canadian resources, build networks between small businesses, and continue to seek out emerging markets. We have talent in Kingston. We need to figure a way to keep them here and not lose them to, elsewhere. And an active MP can play an outsized role by constantly advocating for their constituent and looking to make connections. But there is something else that we have to face as well. We have seen how bad faith politics has quite possibly destroyed American democracy, and it's certainly damaged our place in the world. We're way too close to them. So let's open our eyes and let's act accordingly. We have seen some of the US-style politics creeping into our own dialogue in recent years. And I think the story of this election is that people don't want that. And that's what I've been hearing when I'm meeting you in the community. One of my first priorities as your MP would be to pursue collaboration with other parties to fully implement the recommendation of the ARC Commission. We must make sure that our institutions are safe for interference from bad actors. And I think that Canadians are sending the message that they expect better from us than that. If you care about the safety of your people, you must lead by example. And so I'll urge your leader to do what he must do and get that clearance. As your MP, I will... What is that, 15 seconds? Oh, dear. As your MP, I would primarily look at work across party lines, like I said earlier. And I really believe that, we're fortunate. Canada is a great country and one with many hopes for all of us and the world.
Thank you, Daria. Ryan.
Thanks, Karen. I mean, I think what comes to mind when it comes to collaboration is to think about what City Council does. One of the things that I am most proud of over the last 10 years is that I have worked with Conservative councillors, Liberal councillors, NDP councillors, Green Party councillors, and we work as a team. We don't always agree on every issue. There's some issues where we're collaborating and others are critiquing, and then on the next issue, sometimes that changes. And so, you work issue to issue. I think at the end of the day, you need to be able to sit down and have a conversation. And you need to agree to say, there's a lot that we probably do agree on. Often we agree on the same goal. Sometimes we just disagree on the right route to get to that goal. But I think that is what leadership is about. And unfortunately, yes, I think that partisanship seems to have gotten worse over the years, and I think there's examples on all sides and on all fronts on that. But I think at the end of the day, collaboration is important. Not just with one, but being able to collaborate with anybody around the table, depending on what that issue is. That's how you get things done. I think that my track record demonstrates that, and I've been very clear with people that the way that I would be as MP is the way that I've been as mayor. Constructive, focused on results, action-oriented, not busy attacking others, but instead focused on pushing our community forward.
Thank you, Brian. And the fifth question, actually Mark alluded to this earlier, about VIA. With the cancellation of VIA Rail's proposed high-frequency rail project, which included Kingston as a hub location and promised increased service, and now the shift to the high-speed rail project, now known as ALTO, there appears to be no dedicated support for Kingston, despite it being the 10th busiest rail station in the country. What steps will you take to ensure our city continues to receive frequency and reliability of rail service that our residents and economy depend upon? And we'll start with Mark.
Okay, I take issue with this question because we're not the 10th busiest, we're the 5th busiest.
I thought fifth.
Exactly, I
I
thought
thought
that too.
fifth too, but all of our research kept saying 10.
We're the 5th
Thank
busiest
you.
VIA station. The reality is that, and I've been tracking this issue for years, and I've had numerous conversations about it. The line that runs, that Kingston is on, the corridor that Kingston is on, there's just not enough room to build the high-speed line on that, and it would require the expropriation and purchasing of land that would take years. So instead, VIA has decided, or ALTO has decided a different route, which I'm sure all of you are aware of. But I don't see that as something that limits what's going to happen in Kingston. I actually see it as something that's going to increase availability in Kingston. Because when you think about it, any of you take the train, right now you're getting on a train in Kingston that is either coming from Montreal or Toronto and going to the other, with the exception of a couple others. But the point is that we're just a stop along the way. What actually happens when a new dedicated line is built that can take all that traffic along the top is it allows opportunities for higher frequency. Kingston can actually become a hub. We can have trains that start and end in Kingston, and Kingston, the 5th busiest station, actually becomes a focal point where trains start and end from. And I just want to confirm, because I think that there is a lot of confusion out there on this particular issue. But I'll read a quote here from the Kingstonists where they said, Via Rail said current and planned Via Rail services will not be impacted by the high-speed train project, and opportunities to improve service on these routes to better address local needs will be further explored during the 6-year development phase of the ALTO project. So my point to say that there's been some confusion over this issue, and it's certainly not, and none of the information that I've ever received has VIA indicated that they've suddenly changed course to do one instead of the other. I actually think this opens up opportunities for Kingston to actually be a hub. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Thank you for the correction.
My turn.
Maria,
All
it's
right.
your turn.
Okay. I don't know why my mind went there, but I must say it. I just think of folks who cannot go to work or, reach the hospital because of the fare situation. But we're talking about VRL, so I'll focus on that. And since the Liberals are so keen on excluding Kingston from this plan, we have to look at protecting and expanding the service we have. And the quickest way to increase reliability and frequency is by actually enforcing existing law. The VRL Canada Act already gives priority to passengers trains over freight trains. Yet anyone who has taken the train will know that the passenger train are regularly delayed because of many reasons, and they need to give way to and sometimes because they need to give way to a freight train. We also need to talk about whether VRL is delivering affordable fares considering the cost of living and everything else. Part of VRL mission statement is about delivering an affordable service, yet a round trip to Ottawa from Kingston could cost you $100 plus. And the Quebec City and Windsor corridor to Windsor corridor is densely populated, and we cannot simply be talking about our riding as if it's a stop to fuel. There is opportunity. The reality is that folks simply were not prioritized. And, we have farmers who can rely on the service of rail. We have, businesses and people who need, better transportation rather than driving. And so I would definitely work with those in charge, in position of power, the sayer, the doers, and to ensure that this is addressed for us here in Kingston.
Thank you. Brian?
Thanks, Karen. So on this issue, Mark is correct that there's been a lot of confusion on Via Rail's plans, but that's because the current Liberal government changed those plans. So a number of years ago, the city was approached with a proposal for a new conventional rail line that would run north of Kingston, but that as part of that plan would make Kingston a rail hub within Eastern Ontario. Not a promise of, well, we'll explore it and yes, we think there's potential, but an actual commitment. In fact, that commitment led City Council to formally endorse it because we had it in writing. We knew it was going to happen. The original plan was far less expensive, and so that freed up dollars to be able to create a rail hub here in Kingston. Because creating a rail hub, it's not cheap. There is a lot of additional infrastructure that needs to be put in place, in this case here in Kingston. The problem that I have is that a few months ago, suddenly that plan completely changed from what was originally called the high-frequency rail, conventional rail expansion, to a new high-speed line. I have no issues against high-speed line, although I do think it's way more expensive, and I think there's a concern financially, and also just the cost of a high-speed ticket, which is generally much more expensive than conventional rail. So I think we do need to have the debate about whether that is the best path to go. But the bigger issue is that the Liberal government created a new company called Via HFR, now called Alto, and they, now in discussions with the city, have no recollection of any commitment that was made to Kingston in the past. That, to me, is a bait and switch. So I'm going to call it out. That is not acceptable. And so that's why, as a city, we have passed a motion rescinding our support, saying it's not right to make that commitment and then take that away from us because the plans have changed. As MP, that is absolutely something that I would fight on hard to make sure. Let's go back to the original plan. It's great for everybody in Eastern Ontario and definitely great for Kingston as well.
Thank you, Brian. And Finn?
Thank you. I'm not even going to need my glasses for this one. The Green Party loves trains. We love trains. They do a great job of transporting a lot of people wherever they need to be without using a lot of fossil fuels, right? That means it's better for the climate, better for the environment. It's all good. I also agree with Daria. Locally, we have a problem with the Wolfe Island Ferry. So we're a bit of a hot mess in Kingston when it comes to transportation services. Are we going to be a rail hub? Are we not going to be a rail hub? Right? That's a big issue for us. But if we want to be a sustainable economy for the future and give our kids a future, we need to attract business and industry and people. If we're not included in the high-speed line, despite what Mark's saying, and we just become this little regional area, we'll just be that, a little regional area that people skip on their way from Toronto to Montreal or Ottawa. So, yep, I agree with Brian. We have to fight for that and make sure that that happens for us. But we also need to address transportation infrastructure in general. And the Wolfe Island Ferry is an absolute disaster. In 1975, the Wolfe Island 3, which is still running today quite well, was built in Thunder Bay, Ontario. The current disaster, I say that as a mariner, I know, which is going back and forth no more because it's been moved to Hamilton because it can't be put in a dry dock here in Kingston because the LaSalle Causeway Bridge is broken, yeah, is a disaster. That's all a problem, and we need to fix that. That boat was built in Romania by a Dutch company. The Liberal government didn't keep that industry in Canada, and we need to do that. You need an MP who understands this. You can say, hey, whoa, slow down. 1, Kingston Transportation Hub. 2, build in Canada. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. Question number 6. What specific policies would you support to improve Kingston's housing availability and affordability challenges, particularly as municipalities struggle to find the infrastructure such as water, roads, and energy needed to enable development? And the first question goes to Daria.
Okay. All right, thank you. I wasn't too sure. It sounds to me like I know quite a lot about what we need and policies that are failing, policies that could be reformed, and so on. And so I really hope we all are on the same page and can send me to Parliament. But on this question, we need to increase federal funding transfer to municipalities and bring back a bigger role for the federal government in building homes right across Canada. The Liberal and the Conservatives have downloaded more and more costs to the provinces and municipalities over the years, and the consequences are obvious here at home and all across the country. It is failed economic policy. The Liberals haven't had the courage to take on this crisis, somebody's phone is on, to take on this crisis meaningfully, and rent have doubled nationwide. Now, with the Conservative light Mark Carney as the Prime Minister, it's going to get any worse. We all know this, and with regard to housing. And, Mark Carney spent his career making the wealthier more wealthy, and we need better. How is a family supposed to win a bid on a home when you're competing against someone with billions and billions? It's quite not possible. So I can hear the despair from folks in our community. New Democrats will crack down on the asset management company and hedge fund that wreak havoc, in our housing market. 30 seconds. I do wear glasses most of the time. On housing, New Democrats support a range of policy solutions, and we intend to deliver 3 million homes in 4 years. That's doable for a country like ours, and I would ensure that we get our fair share here in Kingston. We can do this if we're investing massively in corporative and non-market solutions. Folks who are way older than I share stories of wartime. Why aren't we doing this in this moment of crisis? We need a wartime approach as well.
Thank you, Daria. Ryan.
Thanks, Karen. There's no question that housing continues to be one of the biggest issues that we face as a community and as a country. I do appreciate the shout out in the question to the challenges municipalities face. I'm going to have to desperately restrain myself from taking on my usual role and advocating for the great work municipalities do and the help that we need. And I'm going to be frank. Obviously, as municipalities, yes, we do need funding, and we appreciate funding that has come from the federal government. And obviously, we're trying to do the best that we can on the infrastructure front. But I think that we need to be honest. If we look at all of the funding that's been provided for housing and the great work that's been done, would anyone suggest that we no longer have a housing crisis? I think that the issue is the scale of this problem is so enormous that I don't think that we can just continue to do what we're doing. I think that we do need some very new approaches to how to tackle this issue. When you look at the Conservative plan, one of them is to say, okay, we're going to take that money, we're just going to use that instead to reduce the tax on new homes, right? So immediately you're reducing the price, which again is taking a step towards affordability. We're investing in trades, right? At the end of the day, one of the things that is the most expensive to creating homes is obviously the labor that's involved. And if there's a shortage of labor, right, then that makes home building that more expensive. And so being able to invest in the supplies, not only of the lumber, but more importantly of the tradespeople that we're going to need in the years to come to actually build those homes. The other piece is, I'm just going to say this, housing is overregulated. That's one of the challenges that creates costs. There are so many rules and borders, and it's not saying that it should be a free-for-all. As a city, we've been trying to reduce those rules as much as we can, but there are so many other layers and rules and over-regulation. Unfortunately, CMHC is a good example of that. We need to be able to strip that away, make it easier to build housing. That's how we'll get the supply up. That's what you're going to need to actually make housing affordable again.
Thank you, Brian. And Finn.
Thanks. I may be the only renter here, so let me tell you, that's painful in Kingston at this time. Rents have been going up steadily year after year. We've been talking about housing affordability I did a bit of research for this debate and saw Mark talking about it 2 election cycles ago. And not a lot is happening, right? We still have urban sprawl. There's houses being built. They're just not being built for the people who can't afford them, right? So we have a problem, which is how do we take new immigrants? How do we take people who work at the bottom end of the pay scale, and how do we put them into housing? Well, the answer isn't freeing up developers so that they can build big subdivisions out in wherever. The answer is to concentrate some housing here in Kingston. It's to free up some federal land so we can build some affordable housing here in Kingston. It means going to a university like Queen's and working with them and saying, how come you're not buying up these houses around you and putting in residences for the overflow of students in the city, right? That end up pushing the rest of us further out until we're past Amherst-View, until we're past the East End, and now we've got another problem because we can't get into town because there's a bridge not working or the roads have a million potholes in them. Those are real issues when it comes to housing affordability, right? If you're wealthy and you've got your own house, fantastic. I hope it retains its value. But I came here 10 years ago thinking, oh, move my family from Africa here, thinking, oh, we'll buy a house. Not a chance. And if you're an immigrant moving to this country right now and you think they can afford a home, they can't, right? It's too difficult. So we need to solve that. We need an MP who's going to do that, not someone who's a landlord himself. We need someone who can represent every side in this issue. Thank you, Karen. Did I go over?
Just a smidge.
I can't see.
Just a little mark.
Okay, so affordable housing and housing affordability. Let's not confuse the two because they're quite different. Affordable housing quite often is housing that's geared to your income. The federal government has helped to create, since I've been member of parliament, 250 units in our municipality alone. Perfect example, right down the street, 1316 Princess Street, which the city of Kingston, through the rules that the mayor talked about with CMHC, applied for funding, received funding, and built that building. Many other projects like that throughout the city. That's affordable housing. Housing affordability is how do we help people that are just this far away from getting out of a rental and into a mortgage and owning and building equity. How do we make that transition? And that's completely different. A lot of talk around here has been on rules and regulations and potholes and stuff, but where does the federal government fall into this? And that's where we have a plan in terms of housing affordability. We have indicated in our platform commitments that we are going to establish a Canada Homes operation, which will, like wartime housing, build new housing led by a federal government agency. We'll provide $25 billion in financing for innovative prefabricated homes. When you can build a home in a factory and bring it out and place it on a poured foundation, they can be a lot cheaper because you don't have the weather constraints. And third, we will allocate $10 billion in low-cost financing and grants for affordable home builders. Builders that are looking to build affordable homes that can get people into housing and to purchase a home. We have established a plan directly to help finance through loans those particular builders. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Our last question before we get to closing remarks. In a time of increasing economic unpredictability, interprovincial trade barriers currently cost the Canadian economy an estimated $130 billion annually. How would you work to reduce these barriers? And we start with Brian on this question.
Thank you. I mean, I think it's a great question. I think it's important to understand that a lot of the trade barriers that exist between provinces are because of different regulations and different standards. Every province sort of puts its own, stamp on, whether it's professions or whether it's on different service standards, and so that inadvertently creates trade barriers. So I think we need to recognize that it's hard work. I think if limiting barriers was easy, I think it would have been done long ago, but I do believe that this is the moment to tackle this. And I think if you were to look for the silver lining in the challenge and the threats that we are seeing to our economy from south of the border, it's that I think that Canadians, as never before, are galvanized on this issue. And so now it's a matter of actually getting to work. What do you need to do? Well, there is a role for the federal government to play in terms of national leadership on this issue. There absolutely is a role of convening the first ministers and the provinces to get on board, and that gets to the earlier question about, collaboration and working together. At the end of the day, everyone needs to see that there is, right, a vision and that everyone can win. Again, as an economist, when I teach on trade, right, one of the key results that I always teach my students is that in trade, everybody wins. Right? There are no winners. If one person wins, it doesn't mean that somebody else loses. Everybody can win through this. And so I think it's going to take some concerted effort to be able to harmonize some of those standards. And that's something that the Conservatives have been talking about, harmonizing those professional standards, harmonizing other service standards in different industries so that we can create that level playing field where trade can occur. As a result, I think that that's a great step forward and also places us to be able to explore other trade relationships with other countries as well.
Thank you, Brian.
Yeah, the whole win-win in trade is great if you're Canadian, but if you've lived in Africa or other parts of the world, specifically the third world, you can see how trade doesn't necessarily benefit the local population, especially if they're the people that have to do all the hard work, right? Just quickly to get back to housing, one last thing I would like to say about that is if you can afford to pay your rent, there's no reason a bank shouldn't give you a mortgage, right? So that's something that we need to address as well. As far as interprovincial trade is concerned, all I can say is that the world has changed, right? The United States is no longer our best friend, which means that we will have to, as Brian says, start looking to new trading partners. The irony that that first job needs to be in our own country is not lost on any of us. We need to bring down those trade barriers, right? And that the federal government's role in that should be to work with the provinces to get them to come together and say, okay, let's eliminate trade, right? If we believe in free trade, let's at least have it in our own country, right? Let's not depend on poor Mexican workers or poor Asian workers to fulfill our consumer needs, yeah? As for working for trade relationships overseas, that's pivotal. That's enormous. Europe, Asia, Africa, these are all places that we need to have trade. But to do that, you're going to have to get out of the American model, which means you can't dig baby dig or whatever. You have to respect climate, right? Europeans have climate policies that are way ahead of North Americans, which means building a pipeline is probably not a great idea if we want to be able to trade with Europe. And that is as big a trading partner as the US, and that is where we need to be looking next. Thank you.
Thank you, Finn. And Mark?
Well, we do have trade agreements with Europe and parts of Asia. As a matter of fact, this Liberal government in the last 9 years has signed more trade deals with countries throughout the world than all of their governments combined. The reason why we did that is because we knew when Donald Trump had his tariffs on us the first time around that we couldn't we need to reduce our dependency on the United States. So the question is about interprovincial trade barriers specifically. The reality is that because of our geography, it made sense to trade north and south. It makes a lot more sense to trade between California and British Columbia than British Columbia and Ontario. But what we've come to realize over the last number of months and with what Donald Trump is doing is that we can't depend on that relationship anymore. We have to start looking inward and figuring out how to reduce those trade barriers. Those trade barriers that exist provincially, yes, they're ultimately the provinces that are establishing them. We need to work with the provinces to remove them. We don't have jurisdiction over it, but we can certainly show leadership at the federal level. And that's why Mark Carney indicated that by Canada Day of this year, he will have worked with the provincial governments to tear down those barriers. There's never been a time when provinces have been more interested in reducing those barriers than now. So we need to seize the opportunity and we need to work with provinces, show federal leadership in a way that I believe Mark Carney can do in order to reduce those barriers so that we can get that trade moving across provincial borders.
Thank you, Mark. Daria?
Thank you. So until recently, it was harder to buy BC wine, I'm a wine drinker, than California wine. That is just not an inconvenience. It is a national economic security issue. When our provinces and territories don't work together, our businesses lose out on potential opportunities to add value to their product or service by working together with other businesses across the country. I would use my office as your MP to draw attention to these policies that create barriers to internal trade, and by working with anyone who wants to work in good faith towards eliminating these barriers. Most people don't realize that the biggest barrier really to interprovincial trade are in the service sector. We need to call bad policy what it is and start taking stewardship of the national economy seriously. We're not 13 separate blocks. We are one country, one economy, and it is past time that we started acting like it. And there is also the part, was that a 15 sign? I did not see you. Okay, perfect. There is also the part where folks may need to move from their province or territory, not contribute to the economy where they are because of, affordability, and also because they're not paid well where they live. There is a part where, as an advocate, as a politician, we must ensure that people are well paid and cared for where they reside. So one province won't suffer and so on, but also find ways to collaborate and support each other. We all don't have the same talent and resources, but definitely coming together, we can make it work. You knew, yet here we are. You did what you did, yet here we are. Words and words, it's time for action.
Thank you. That wraps our question period. So now we're going to lead right into closing remarks. So we will start in reverse order from our opening remarks. So our closing remarks, we'll start with Brian, and you have 3 minutes, sir.
I have 3 minutes.
3 minutes to close.
Wow, that's a lot of time. Okay, well.
A lot of time. Do you want to?
No, I'm always a big believer in quality over quantity. So I may not speak for 3 minutes here.
Oh, you
But
should be with another party then.
But I think that we can take a moment to all recognize this is a critical moment for our country. This is a critical election. And I think at critical moments like this, when you have to make a choice, one of the questions you have to ask yourself is, are you better off now than you were 10 years ago? That ultimately is the choice when you're trying to decide, do you stay with the current government or do you vote for a change? And I think that from the conversations that I've had around this community, that most people told me that they are not better off than they were 10 years ago. Many people are worse off. We've talked about those challenges around affordability, around public safety and security, around food insecurity and the lack of housing. So in that moment, right, there needs to be change. We can't just keep doing what we've been doing for the last 10 years and expect that there will be different results. So what does that change look like? Well, I think the concern is, do you vote for the same Trudeau-era cabinet and Trudeau-era advisors and Trudeau-era team? Or do you say it's time for a credible alternative? Right? This is how democracy works. There's a reason why, right, one-party states do not function well, right? There needs to be sometimes those moments of change where, we need fresh ideas, fresh approach, a fresh team to be able to tackle those issues that, okay, if the last 10 years things have been getting worse, this is an opportunity to take new approaches and to be able to make progress. So that's why I'm carrying the Conservative banner. Again, it's been a real honor to be able to participate in this election, and I'm really honored to share the stage with, I think, some great candidates that are all here, all competing with our visions. And so I think the most important thing that I would say is to vote and to engage, right? This is a moment for our voices to be heard, but I do believe that the message of the Conservatives is for hope and change that people desperately need. And so I look forward to not only the next week and a half of the remaining election campaign, having conversations around this community, but also to the months and years ahead. I think that the best is ahead of us, that this crisis can be turned into an opportunity, and the great days are ahead for the country of Canada. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Brian. Daria.
All right. I want to start by sharing that despite the despair that we may be feeling, some of us, if not most of us, there is hope. There is hope for the future. The mayor spoke about changing things. Unfortunately, Canadians have been going back and forth between two major parties. I don't even know why we call them major, but two of them, the blue and the red. The alternative and the real alternative, which unfortunately Canadians have sidelined. We have essentially friend-zoned the NDP. The alternative is the NDP. Look what they've done for you. 25 of them only in Parliament, and look what has happened. He himself acknowledges it. Don't be fooled. It is us, and what we must do is elect as many of us from side to side. What do we say here? Coast to coast to coast, and have as many NDP MP as we can to hold them accountable. Unfortunately, Canada is where it is. And Canada must look itself in the mirror and think about why we keep on flip-flopping between the liberal and conservative and being just mistreated, misrepresented in Parliament. Excuses after excuses, words after words, reports after reports, and no change. They seem to be quite out of touch with what we need as a community. And it's time for change. We all going to be talking about it's time for change, there is hope. But really, they tried, went back and forth, didn't work. Let's stop it. And yes, we have to thank our antiquated electoral system for this. But when it comes to strategically voting, why do we think that we must cede NDP seat and pass it to the Liberal when really, when it comes to progressive policies, it should be the NDP. The Liberal MP should pass their seat to the NDP for a real progressive change for us. For Kingston and the island, what I hear at the door on the phone talking to you, even before the election, before I ran to be your representative in Parliament, is that it was time for us to be well represented in Parliament. Someone who understands what all of us, not just some of us, are going through. Someone who always show up for you, not just during election time, but also between election time. Not just online calling out people, but every day fighting for you in Parliament, and that's what I can do. Trust me, I get in good trouble all the time. And, and it's worth it. A huge privilege for me to be in the position today. Regardless of the outcome of the election, you can count on me to hold whoever it is become a member of Parliament accountable. And thank you.
Thank you. Mark?
Thank you, Karen. And thank you to the Chamber for putting this on today. I think that this election, and I think most of you would agree, is about the future of our country and where we're going. And it really comes down to who you believe the best leader is to take us into that time. I stand by my leader, Mark Carney. You'll notice maybe Fenton and I are the only two that actually mentioned our leaders' names in this debate. And I will proudly stand behind Mark Carney because I believe that he is the right person that we need right now. He is the person that has the experience. He's been a two-time governor of central banks, and Stephen Harper praised him for saving our economy in 2008. As we look towards what we want in a government and how to engage with the United States and how to engage with other countries outside of North America, I think it's very clear that Mark Carney is the person that can do that. He has the proven leadership, he has the balanced vision, and he will deliver on what we require in order to make it through this difficult time. Locally, I commit to continuing to stand up in the House of Commons and fight for the progressive values that I believe the majority of Kingstonians believe in. We're compassionate people, we're motivated people, we're entrepreneurial people. And I believe that the Liberal values are those that best represent our community. That's why I proudly run under the Liberal banner, and I ask for your vote on April the 28th. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. And Finn?
Thank you very much, everybody. Karen, Zerman, wherever Zerman is. Thank you. Brian, Daria, Mark, thank you very much. Absolute privilege to get to do this. It's nerve-wracking. It's very difficult. I don't know how these guys do it all the time. I want to echo a couple of things. I agree with all my fellow candidates about certain things. One, I agree with Brian absolutely. After 37 years, it's time for change. Sometimes you have to exercise democracy, right? Much like we have to exercise ourselves. I mean, may not look like I do a lot of it, but we do need to exercise democracy. However, the only thing I disagree with is that change needs to be to let's jump to the blue team and vote for them. There's not really much of a change when we do that. I echo what Daria has to say, right? I agree with her. This electoral system is broken. It's broken because we're fighting with each other. We're saying things to each other as Canadians that we should never say, that the people who went to war for us would never say to each other, yeah? So, but once again, I disagree with Daria on what the end result should be, right? I agree with Mark.
Just stop.
I said Mark Carney.
Oh, really?
No, I agree with Mark. Mark Carney, he's not a bad alternative. The Greens aren't going to sit here and tell you that Liz May or Jonathan Pedneau is going to be the Prime Minister next 2 weeks from now. That's just not realistic, right? But we can get into Parliament. We can speak our minds, right? We're not part of the traditional party structure. All three parties have whip votes. They're sort of messianic and cultish in the way they treat their leaders. Pierre Poilievre is running around rallies trying to be Trump light. That's awful, right? That's not the Canadian way. We shouldn't be worshiping someone because they say crappy things about people. Unfortunately, Mr. Singh's struggling, but it's still top down, right? And Mark Carney is the leader of the Liberal Party, but he was embraced after 11 years of Justin Trudeau. And that has saved the Liberal fortunes very recently. A couple of weeks ago, this wasn't looking so good for the Liberal Party, right? So that's a problem with our electoral system, and that needs to change. Yeah? We need to be able to address those issues. So I have sort of 3 points I want to leave you with. First is that you need to exercise democracy, right? You have to think about changing from one party to another party. I hope that's the Green Party, because I feel I can represent you. We're not a top-down party. We're a bottom-up. People first, constituents first, Canada first. Secondly, what is the point in electing an MP who can't do that, who is constrained by party structures? That just doesn't make a lot of sense, because how do they then get to stand up for Kingston? And Mark's done a great job. He's been out there pounding it, but he's not on the front bench. He's not going to be the next foreign minister or the next minister of transportation. And the last thing is this: the Green Party may be small, but we know how to punch above our weight, right? We have Liz in there. We have a guy called Mike Morris in there. They're passing bills. They're crossing the aisles. They're working with other parties. Why? Because we're non-threatening to each other. We're not bipolar.
Thank you, Finn.
Anyways, thank you very much, Kingston, and have a lovely couple of weeks. Thank you.
I would like to thank all four of our candidates who took their time off your campaign trails to be with us today. I appreciate your time and energy in what you're pursuing. Special thank you to Modern Niagara and Cogeco for hosting and filming us today. And thank you all for joining us this morning. And we hope that this will help you in your decision making come April 28th. So thank you all again for being here. Thank you to our candidates.
Great.